Hello and welcome to The Buck Stops Here. I'm Catherine Murray, and certainly while I always like to get economists and strategists' perspective on the economy, I also think it's great to get on-the-ground views, and I'm pleased to provide you perspective on the economy and the government policies affecting all of us and what that might mean for our outlook. Murray Mullen joins us now. He's the chairman, CEO, and president of the Mullen Group, one of Canada's largest logistics and warehouse companies, and also publicly traded under the ticker MTL. Murray, great to be able to catch up with you. Thanks so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to this, Catherine.
Thank you. And for our viewers to know, on the news forum and my news show here, The Buck Stops Here, you and I have been basically speaking and doing interviews for 8 to 10 years.
Yes.
So it's a nice kind of perspective to have because, whatever your sentiment has been, in my experience, has actually always been very accurate in terms of what's actually going on in the economy. So love to catch up in terms of, you say prior to this interview, we're in interesting times. I think we've always been into interesting times in all the years that we speak in, but what are you seeing these days?
Oh, Catherine, there's a lot of conflicting things going on in the economy. I think from a big picture perspective, a couple data points that I'll mention. Number one is clearly there's been a lot of money that's been put into the system, so that's percolating throughout the system, and that's causing some issues. There's no doubt about it. Now that might show up in supply chain, that might show up in asset valuations, and my view is it's really starting to show up in the inflationary numbers. And I've been worried about this for a period of time, but it's there. It's right front and center for the average person right now. Now, inflation doesn't hurt the people that have, are on the upper scale and in terms of the income brackets, et cetera. But for the average person, inflation is the most devastating tax there is. And so why have we got that? Well, most of it has to be attributed to monetary policy. So I think that the response by the governments and by the policymakers, particularly in terms of monetary policy and deficit financing, have now created this situation where we have a lot of inflation that's just percolating, as I say, underneath. That is the one area that I'm quite concerned about. You also have way more government intervention in the market today than before, and I thought we had lots before, but clearly the government is more involved in so many aspects of our lives. And when the government gets involved, that typically means regulation, and regulation implicitly slows things down. I know what the intentions are, but I would tell you that it slows things down. And one of the reasons why I think we have rising prices and inflation is because productivity is going down. More regulation and productivity just gets hampered. That's what's happening. So hence we've got problems in the supply chain, basically right around the world. I see that as a big issue. Clearly, there's a lot of people have, with all the money in the system, lots of jobs, lots of this, lots of that, which is totally opposite than 18 months ago. When COVID hit, we had to lay off 1,800 people.
Right.
That was awful, that you go through that. Today, we got most of those people back, but I would tell you from a time of a slack labor market to an extremely tight labor market, in 18 months, unprecedented that I've seen. That's been just a massive rebound. So,
doesn't that lead you to be a little bit more positive then in terms of the ability to rehire? I'm almost thinking with the inflation that CEOs such as yourself aren't going to hire because you've got the higher costs as well. I've only got 20 seconds and then we'll pick it up on the other side of this break.
Oh, I tell you, it's the issue I struggle with all of our businesses, and I would tell you, we've got a lot of really good hardworking people. There's a lot of hardworking people in Canada, but I've been adamant. I don't know if there's a whole bunch more of hardworking people that want to go into, let's call that the old economy.
Yeah.
The old economy is going to struggle, in my view, attracting new people. And then you've got a whole bunch of the baby boomer generation
Yeah.
that's got a window that gets shorter and shorter, and we've got to replace that
Yeah.
with other people that want to come in and learn the business, and that takes younger, and that's a real problem right now.
Murray, I just want to pick it up on the topic and conversation of, the struggle with whether or not you want to expand or not, given the challenges within the labor market. Can you just describe that a little bit further?
Well, look, I think everybody knows that, well, you can't expand your markets unless you got access to good people. You can't look after your customers unless you got access to good people, and that becomes really the issue today. So I'm having difficulty. If I can't connect that we can get the people to do the job, I'm not going to invest the capital additionally to go grow in the economy. So we've got a bit of a barrier that's holding us back on that. So I have to think thoughtfully and strategically about that. And it's one that honestly, I don't have all the answers to it. We're trying to figure out what the heck happened and how come all of a sudden, in the labor markets, and it's not us, it's everybody knows it's across the board, is that how come we can't attract more Canadians to go into the workplace, and where, having a job and working and adding value and being part of a team is not the cool thing to do.
Hmm.
And I've got young people, I got young family members, and I know a lot of young people through my children and through all that kind of stuff. And it just seems that it's not. There's just a different point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but I am telling you
Yeah.
that it's getting complicated to hire people to grow our business.
Which at the end of the day means our economy doesn't grow. So something has to change here. I want to go back to something that was, interesting in a different view as well than I've heard. When we think about the supply chain challenges and whether or not the higher costs are going to be inflationary or transitory or longer lasting, it's interesting what you're almost suggesting in terms of government intervention causing lower productivity and essentially slower growth is what's been also impacting the supply chain, obviously in addition to COVID. But what you're suggesting is a little bit longer lasting in terms of the supply chain effects. Is that what you're kind of talking about and suggesting? Like, how should we look at the difficulties surrounding supply chain? Because there are other people who are saying it's starting to improve.
Oh boy, I'll tell you, that's a great question, and it's one that a lot of people that are a lot smarter than I am think they have the answers to it. I would say to you, I think that the supply chain issues are maybe transitory. I think that a lot of the things that I see going on are common, just have happened as a result of just everything going wrong at the right time, or the wrong time, I guess, in this case. So I wouldn't be surprised if the supply chain doesn't start to get rectified. Now, that's assuming there are no other shutdowns or at either the ports in China, the manufacturing in China, or at the ports in Europe or North America due to COVID or whatever else. So a lot of it still goes back to COVID, because once you shut it down and once you back up the highway, it goes back for a long period of time. And it just when we were getting ready, I thought, to get out of it, then China shut down again, and then that backs up everything, and now we're still paying that price. That part, I think, can get resolved next year. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest with you, to see a little bit of slowdown in the economy, because I think inflation is going to put the brakes on the economy a bit. The average person is going to have to are spending way too much money on their needs, and they won't have enough money for their wants. So I think there'll be a little bit of a slowdown that will help the supply chain get caught up. That will bring prices down, and productivity levels. We've got to get productivity levels up. For example, just the ships coming from China or from Asia over to North America that used to be 30 days for one of those big container ships to come over. That's now double or triple. So that
Wow.
big asset, now they're pricing that as if they're only getting 5 rounders or 6 rounders a year, rather than before where they were getting 9 or 10. So that's a lack of productivity. Now, is that because of delays at this port, that port? It's not in the open water that the delay is happening.
Right.
It's happening in the ports, and that's just waiting time. And then you've got all these drivers. Our drivers are not as productive today because they go in and you got to line up to get. There's such high demand, but the infrastructure isn't there. So infrastructure is going to take a lot longer to be able to solve this problem than what I think people think, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It'll all depend on demand.
Okay. And I've got a lot of questions on that in terms of why we are struggling so much now. I mean, I wonder if we were starting to see some of it pre-COVID as well in terms of the lack of infrastructure. Because of course, when we hear about the government and where they want to spend money, it's infrastructure, but it's always been infrastructure. So my concern is that actually going to be good money spent on the right things, and how? We're going to pick it up right after the break. Murray, I do want to pick it up on this last point that I mentioned, which is, and from your viewpoint, it's amazing. Like, your business LTL, less than truckload. You see the needs of infrastructure, and yet governments around the world always say we're going to spend on infrastructure, and then they finally pass a bill, but it takes 10 years to get done. And was it enough money? Like, did we see all of this coming pre-COVID anyway?
Yes. Everybody knew that we were pressing against the limits in terms of infrastructure, and but it takes a crisis to get governments to act in anything. Common sense and planning ahead, that's not it. Crisis, yeah, they'll get at it, but it's going to take time, and that's why I'd lead back to your previous comment. Look, this may not be as transitory as what they say, because there's just a lot of bottlenecks in the system right now. The infrastructure just is not there to meet the demand, and we've got strong demand. So it really is now dependent upon strictly on demand, Catherine. If the economy stays strong and there's money in the system and people have got jobs and they're spending it and demand stays strong, then it's not going to be transitory. And I would tell you also, I doubt very, very much whether the labor issue is transitory. So these are the kind of things that I think we have to think about when we're running our businesses, and what the consumer needs to think about. This inflationary thing is real. It bothers me. I can tell you land prices have absolutely doubled, particularly in key markets. I can tell you labor rates are not going up at CPI. They're going up at double CPI. That means that throughout the whole system, the prices are going to go up. So I'm watching that very, very carefully. And I doubt very much whether the policymakers, by the time they get to the decisions, we're talking 5-10 years down the road before anything really can change. So I go back to, it really depends on demand.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we can handle much more from the supply side, Catherine. I just don't see it.
From an infrastructure perspective, then, what is it that you would want to see take place in Canada, or, of course, the United States? I mean, with the infrastructure bill just passing, what do you want to see them put that money to work at? What would actually improve the economy and the supply chain?
Well, I mean, you got big problems. You got to have the big ports, and I think they were looking at it. But how are you going to get railways expanded? A lot of freight moves by rail. Yes, truck moves freight, and it moves it locally, and it moves it for what we call the first mile and the final mile. But intermodal is a huge part of it. Working with the rails, it's the most efficient way of moving a lot of freight from port to big city, city to port. So there's going to have to be a concerted effort, not just by the government, also by business and by the business community, to expand that. Now, you're going to have trouble at the ports. It's going to be difficult to get a permit for anything. So I think we're just stuck in this vortex for a little bit. And I think people should get used to a little bit higher prices, and probably not as much the on-demand service as you want. Even go to a restaurant today. A lot of restaurants are only open 5 days a week, not 7. Why? They can't get people.
Yeah.
If the restaurants can't, and I can't to deliver, you should just be prepared that maybe you just can't get everything when you exactly want it.
Yeah. Well,
Better plan ahead.
Got a what?
better plan ahead.
Exactly. It's still amazing to me, though, when I do order something on Amazon that it is somehow able to arrive at my door 2 days later. That's still, I cannot figure that one out. But I want to go back to something you said, Murray, which is it's very difficult to get a permit for anything. Do you mean that you mentioned it in conjunction with the port comment? Are you saying we need more ports, but we're not going to be able to get them? Or what was your point there?
Well, the permit on anything, whether it's to build a port or whether it's to build a pipeline,
Okay.
whether it's to build hydro lines into Maine, for example, but Quebec, you've heard about the issues there. It's been turned down. So, you've got a lot of different views in life, and everybody has a view, and it's really difficult for the regulators and the politicians to put the peg in and say, no, we're doing it because it's in the public's best interest.
Right.
They're having difficulty doing that, and there's a lot of special interest groups today, Catherine. You know that, and they slow the process down. And so that's my view on that point. I'm not blaming anybody. I just say it's the process that we're going through. But clearly, I've seen it firsthand in trying to get a permit to build a new facility.
Wow.
We've been waiting 1 year just to get the permit to build a new facility so we can handle the freight more efficiently.
Okay, we're going to leave it on that note. I'm going to pick it up after this break. So, Murray, this is fascinating. You were just saying that you've been waiting 1 year to get a permit to build a new warehouse to help with the supply chain, the logistics, et cetera. Why is it 1 year? What are they saying to you?
Well, actually, it depends on which department he talks to. So when I say a permit, I mean, you've got multiple departments. You've got a provincial, you've got a federal, you've got a local, you've got this department, that department. So you need everybody to collate it. And I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of people have used COVID as an excuse not to get things done. But I think if I asked all of our, all the regulators and all the politicians, why don't you just try and help the system work smoother rather than work against the system? Because the end user will be the major beneficiary of it. We're not going to invest just to put money to work. We're doing it so we can service the customer more efficiently. And without new infrastructure, without new capital going in, we cannot get more efficient. And so we just need a more concerted effort to say, look, let's get this done, because the average person is the one that's ultimately going to be the winner.
Yeah.
So that I see that, and Catherine, we see it on the pipeline. I don't even want to get into the TMX, the Trans Mountain Pipeline. That thing will be triple or quadruple the original cost, and it'll take 5 years longer than what they originally envisioned.
Yeah.
If they keep going at the same pace.
And it's amazing. Last CPI reading in Canada, and just seeing the cost of meat and dairy skyrocketing. Anybody who's been on everybody's on a fixed budget. It's just so difficult. And particularly, I've always said this, and I see it with my mom. She's a senior. She's 85, and doesn't touch her capital, lives off of the interest rate environment. It's so difficult. And this goes back to, we're going to wrap it in the next couple of minutes, but what you started out the conversation saying, that monetary policy is what's caused inflation. And it's been really, really difficult as well for all of the retirees and seniors who are trying to live within this new monetary policy regime that we've been in since the financial crisis. It's very difficult.
It's really difficult, and I would highly encourage our Prime Minister to spend a little bit more time on understanding how monetary policy actually impacts the average person. And it is, and they've got, they overjuice the system right around the world. Now they're going to have to delicately manage how they withdraw some of that stimulus without killing the golden goose here, and because ultimately the little person pays the price every time. And I think you're seeing that again here right now, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You just have to look at the people going to a grocery store or trying to get this or do that, and they're always going to be behind the cost curve. It just pains me to go through it, and we're trying to keep ahead with our people so that they can they can look after their families. But I'm going to tell you, this is a complicated system, and All I got to look back at the policymakers and say, that was your decision, and you might have overcooked the system.
Yeah. And, we have to remember as well, prior to the election, Prime Minister Trudeau said he didn't think about monetary policy. And anybody who didn't take economics, don't worry about it. Monetary policy just means the interest rate environment that we're all living in and keeping rates lower for longer or higher. And they have to play catch up. Maybe people will start to really see it, Murray, in terms of the effects. And I never wanted us to get to this point, though, where you are really seeing the squeeze on retirees. But I think we're here. Last word
Yeah,
to you.
yeah. Last word I would say is I hope the policymakers and everybody understands that it does impact the little person. So we've got to get that monetary policy right. And they've got a tough job, if you ask my opinion, because you've given, now you have to take it away. And I wish them success.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to run a business within knowing that they are going to have to take it away shortly. Otherwise, this inflation thing is going to get totally out of hand.
Absolutely. Murray, great to see you and catch up with you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Always a pleasure, you know that, and congratulations on the new gig. It's I've looked at some of it, and you're doing a fantastic job, you and the team there. So
Thank
great
you.
to chat.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the in-depth conversations, longer format, and all of the content that we are bringing you. Stay tuned for more on the News Forum, and the buck stops here. I'm Catherine Murray.